Don't even know if it's going to work. So we'll see anyways. Let me just check and see if this is working over on YouTube. I'm using totally different streaming software for this one, and I'm not familiar with this. So, like I say, bear with me. Bear with me. If you're even there, if you can even see what's going on here. Okay, let me go to my channel. Hope everyone's having a good weekend, by the way. It's another beautiful, warm weekend on the East Coast. Not sure what it's like across the rest of Canada, but it's a beautiful, beautiful weekend here on the old East Coast in Atlantic Canada. Let me go to live. Let's see here. So far, I am not seeing anything. But let me go to the actual live section and see if it's here. I don't see it. Maybe let's check on X. See if it's happening over there. Profile. No. Well. Why do I not see anything? Why, oh why, oh why? Solo layout. All right, let's check Rumble then. But it should be live streaming on those platforms as well. So I'm not sure, but we will go to Rumble. See what's going on here. See if I can't get it. Oh. Okay. So apparently this is only being streamed on Rumble. Haha. See what's going on here. Okay, well, I guess so. It's not going to be on YouTube. It will at least be on Rumble, though. Okay. Oh. Froze up on me here. All right, well, hopefully you folks will notice this at least on Rumble. Let me get the quality up here. Okay, it's looking okay. It's looking okay on Rumble. Why it's not working out on my YouTube channel, I am not sure on that one. It must have been the way I set it up. Somehow I have managed to make a mistake. Well, that's the thing. I'm not as tech savvy as I wish I was when it comes to this stuff. Oh, I better post over there. Unfortunately, will be live streamed to Rumble only today. Oh, let me give the link. Yeah, why not? Let's give the link. That'll make things a whole lot easier for everyone, won't it? Okay. There we go. So, like I say, at least something is happening. Better than nothing, right? So let's close out the YouTube then, since we're not going to be needing that today. And actually, I could share this. Why not? Let's share it on the old Facebook, because I don't think it's happening. I have my Facebook and YouTube both linked to this software. At least I thought I did. But I'm not seeing it over on the old Facebook either. Speaking of Facebook, and that's another thing, I'm going to have issues even trying to share things because I'm not sure how to use this new software. God darn it, Bennett, why did you not just stick with what you're used to before you figure this out? I don't know. I like to try new things from time to time, right? And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, as happens in real life, right? Not just on the internet, folks, not just on the internet. But yeah, let me see if we got anything here. No, I am not seeing anything on Canadian Libertarian Facebook page. So once again, I'll just share the link to the Rumble video. And we'll put her right. Put her there. Put her there. We'll put her there. We might as well share it over on Minds too. Let the fine folks over at Minds know that I'm live streaming to Rumble today. Rumble only. This is a Rumble exclusive. Let's get ready to rumble, folks. Let's get ready to rumble. Okay. So, yeah. So, once again, if you are seeing this, or if you're following any of my social media pages, well, at least Minds, X, and Facebook, you'll at least be getting a notification right about meow. Let me just share that again on X. Join me by clicking the link. By clicking the link. Yes, sir. Okay. Okay, so let's see what's going on here anyways. Now that we're getting the notifications out and sent. Yeah, I do get a kick. You know, sometimes they're entertaining. Rarely informative. Big time into gossiping and talking about people, right? Which is why I'm not a huge fan of just dealing things from the political lens or, you know, from the political aspect. But that seems to be what's dominating the discourse and all the social media platforms these days is, you know, still us versus them. It's, you know, red versus blue, whether you're talking about Republican versus Democrats or liberals versus conservatives up here in Canada. Oh, got to sprinkle a little bit of orange in there up here in old Canada, right, in Kanakistan, or over in the UK, like the Tories versus Labour. So it's, once again, red versus blue, red versus blue. You know, Leafs versus Canadians. No, I joke in a way, but it's kind of that race to that lowest common denominator, which leaves so much, not just really important information as it pertains to ideas and philosophy off the table, but there's not much to it. There's no real nuance other than, yeah, my team's better than your team, man. My master's better than your master. My gang of thieves, of lying thieves and bandits and control freaks are much better than yours. And, you know, I get it. Listen, I can play the game too. And I got to tell you, for you Americans, Trump is the best game in town in terms of politics. That's a no-brainer and for sure. But you really should be doing much better than just playing the us versus them, team red versus team blue. You know, especially in 2024 and this information age and the beginnings of Enlightenment era 2.0, as I have coined it, as the phrase I've attributed to these days. It's wild to see the spectacle of politics so dominating, right? But I understand people have been trained and indoctrinated into the cult of statism, and it just dominates every bit of discourse, whereas the philosophers, right, the people, the ideas people, right, the ones who get right down to the nitty-gritty of things and are the ones that will truly help you out to understand, you know, what does it mean to be a free human being and how you navigate through life and the proper ways of how you should treat people and all those great ideas and the things that actually make for a genuinely free and prosperous society. Once again, they're still basically at the kids' table or left out of the picture entirely, which is a sad state of affairs. But hey, you know, when in Rome, right? When in Rome. Speaking of Rome, what was that preview I was watching there? There's a new series. Looks like it's going to be a great series. Actually, let me just check it out real quick while I'm waiting to see if things are going to happen on some of the other platforms. And anyways, I do appreciate you folks joining the stream. Hopefully I'll even be able to see some of your comments because, yeah, like I say, this is all totally different here for me. And, yeah, sorry about that. We'll get it straightened out one way or the other. But let me just find out what this series is. I believe it's on Prime. Prime. Here we go. Oh, yeah, here we go. Yeah, so Those About to Die. You can check out the official trailer on YouTube. Like I say, it's called Those About to Die. And yeah, it's on Prime Video, and it's basically in the ancient Rome setting. And wow, it looks like something that's going to be a pretty wild series anyway. So I definitely recommend it. And I believe the first season is already up and available on Prime. So yeah, I definitely recommend checking that out. There's another one we've been watching, me and the wife too, is Vikings Valhalla. We watched the original one just called Vikings, and that was a good series as well. This one looks like it's a good one so far. What do we, I think, 4 or 5 episodes into the first season, and yeah, I like it. It's pretty good show. But anyways, once again, what are we looking for here? Conrad Black. Everybody, have you noticed all these days, like, there's so many people that were fence setters, especially when you're talking about Canadians, that are now gung-ho supporters of Donald Trump, right? I mean, like I said, actually, I was saying this in private conversations. I haven't had a live stream since the whole incident of Donald Trump, the attempted assassination on Donald Trump. I didn't really get a chance to put this, but I'll do it now in this live stream is, Hollywood couldn't write a better script, right? I'm not saying it's scripted, not saying it's fake, right? I don't know. I wasn't there, right? And I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and I never played one on TV either. But you just gotta admit, at the very least, you couldn't write a better script, and especially you've heard me say many times in the past, how Donald Trump, everything just seems to slide off the guy. That's why I call him, and other people that call him, although I don't see that tossed around very many times in at least the kind of people I follow or the kind of stuff that I see on my feed. But yeah, I like using the term, hey, he's Teflon Don, right? Because everything just seems to slide off the guy, right? Nothing sticks, and it's wild. Even bullets, it hits his ear, just basically grazes off of it, right? I mean, amazing. And then, of course, the infamous picture of him standing up with the fist pump in the air, fight, with the, big giant American flag in the background. It's just wild, and it is one for the ages, and this is something that will be talked about and discussed and bantered about for ages, right? No doubt about that. But come on, folks, like how amazing is it? And of course, Trump, what's he say? It's a divine intervention, right? And I mean, that will really appeal to the evangelical class, right? The people that are big believers in God. And once again, I got some faith in me, right? I got some faith, and I'm a believer in the concept, the idea of something greater than us, right? Of some kind of great design. I mean, there's just sometimes when you look out around in nature, even, and some of the amazing things, or some of the beautiful things that even humans could do, and you think this has to be by design. It cannot be just a fluke, right? It sure as hell doesn't seem like it. And if it is just a fluke, once again, that's not the greatest story, not a great narrative, right? For the universe, or for the human species for that matter. So, it is nice to believe, right? As long as it's not in the state. Oh, that's the last thing you want to believe in, right? You don't want to have any faith. You don't want to be a statist. No, sir. I mean, sure, it might benefit you, for a short time in the interim until they finally come for you. And believe me, they will come for you. Nobody will escape the state, right? Especially now with the size of its tentacles. Once again, the name of this live stream is Big State, Little People. And that's what happens, right? Even if you're a Trump supporter. I mean, look at the way people, like I say, I got mad respect for the man in certain ways, but I'm not big into the cult of personality or idol worship. And I am seeing, a certain amount of that starting to take place and form, and from the type of supporters and followers of Donald Trump, right? And sometimes it does get a little bit a little cringy. But once again, this is a reality that's going to unfold, and I'm, I also think in practical terms too. It's not like, it's going to go away anytime soon. But once again, the bigger the state, even right now, if you're a Republican, right, and you're enjoying this stuff, but once again, you got to try to think about, well, what if the shoe was on the other foot? Well, we know when the shoe's on the other foot. How terrible the state can be, right? You know, you're not such fans of the big state apparatus under the helm, under the powers of the Democrats, right? Same with here up in Canada. Well, you know, if you care about freedom and liberty, or even if you're a conservative, and yes, they are two completely different and distinct things, right? But yeah, you know just how harsh and how brutal the state can be. Emergencies Act, right? COVID policies. I mean, I could go on. The list is long and extensive and exhaustive up here in Canada once again. But this is the thing. It's that idea of people want to take the power away from their opponents, but they want to assume it for themselves. Whereas libertarians, anarchists, voluntarists, you know, people that don't seek power, right? We just want, I mean, sure, I'd like to eliminate the state, which is, that can only happen if people stop believing, right? But at the very least, if we can't, you know, grow to a large extent the amount of non-believers in the state, right, of status, if we can't eliminate that concept from their minds entirely, can we at least, bare minimum, can we at least, you know, both sides and everyone in between, right? Although, you know, forget about the left-right thing, but can most, or at least the majority of normal people, can we all just agree, no matter what political gang or party you affiliate with or support, can we just agree that the state has become such a behemoth that it's a genuine, dangerous threat to us all, right? I mean, look at the way the Democrats are acted today, because they're so concerned that if Trump, you know, becomes president, you know, in November, which probably will happen from where I'm sitting anyways, looks like that is what's going to happen. And look at how scared they are. Look at the things they've done to try to eliminate the very potential of Trump gaining power once again. Well, that should be a message to you if you're a Democrat or a liberal or a progressive or, you know, someone that, you know, identifies on the political left. Although, like I say, left and right, that's the wrong way to look at things. But a lot of people believe in that stuff. So if you believe in that stuff and you come from the left, well, isn't the case I'm making right now something that resonates with you, that, yeah, we should really vastly shrink the size and scope of government, at least to the point where we don't feel, or people on both sides of that political divide don't feel such a impending threat or the possible imposition of serious harms to our democracy or our freedoms, right? I think that the best thing that could possibly happen these days is, like I say, people from all areas, both sides of the spectrum, and all areas in between or outside of it, all come to at least one agreement, one simple agreement. Everything else we'll figure out later on. But one simple thing I think we should all be able to agree on today is, yeah, the state is vastly too big. And it's such an imposing threat to us all that at the very least, can we turn this big, giant state of ship around and start heading, you know, back in the direction that's something, I know it's a long way off, way beyond the horizon, where liberty is, right? Where individual freedom, where sovereignty, you know, where the respect of actual freedom of speech and personal autonomy and responsibility. Can we at least try to head in that general direction? Yeah, sure, we've got a long way to go. But as it is right now, we haven't even turned this big giant state of ship around. It's still barreling in the direction of basically, well, the ultimate destination will ultimately be societal collapse and a whole lot worse than what you're used to even today. Even as bad as things have gotten to this point for those of us alive today, it can get a whole lot worse, and it will. Guaranteed. Mark my word, it will get a whole lot worse, right? And of course, the big threat will be, well, who gets to, you know, assume that power or pick up the mantle of power or control the state? Is it going to be the left or the right, team red versus team blue? Well, once again, there's no way to know that, and it changes. That pendulum swings back and forth all the time. So once again, we all benefit, everybody. You know, even some of these identity politics promoters and groups, right, and collectivists, we all benefit if we greatly reduce and shrink the size and scope of government, which is, once again, The metaphor is it's the big, gigantic gun in the room, right? And it's a severe threat to us all. So, once again, can we just all agree on one thing and one thing only, at least for now? Lots of work to be done after the fact, but can we all agree that we got to start shrinking the size and scope of the state? We've got to make that a priority. And the only way that can happen, unfortunately, at the political level, at least, in your personal life, in your social life, there's a million things you could do, and I think I've covered that kind of stuff a lot and exhaustively so in past live streams and videos. But at the political level, right, which is where people are dominantly focused these days, well, the only way you can shrink the size and scope of the state is to get the kind of people in there like your Javier Milei. He is the one person that I'm seeing, at least in the Western sphere, right, down there in South America, down in Argentina. He's the one person that's leading the cause of liberty by, afuera, Ministry of Women's Studies or whatever, afuera, like getting rid of a lot of these big, giant government departments because the state has grown so immensely. And I'm going to be covering that. Actually, I'll just give a shout out to True North for the article that I'll be referencing. And this was great. Like I say, I'm really appreciative of a lot of the stuff that True North and Andrew Lawton as well. A lot of the True North contributors, but Andrew Lawton's one of the best ones, I would say, up there. But in terms of putting out some great information, and in this particular article, I'm not sure if this is actually Andrew Lawton in this one. Let me just go back and check. But in this True North article, no, actually, this is Isaac Lamoureux, True North Wire. So Isaac Lamoureux, thank you very much for putting all this information together, because this is something that's really important, just to show people, just to give you some context, and just how large the state has become, in particular in Canada. Just take a quick drink here, folks, and I'll get right into it. I hope you folks are finding me over on Rumble. If you don't get a chance to see it now, perhaps you'll get a chance to see this a little bit later on, because it was very short notice. I get that. And I'm using completely different streaming software, so I know things are different, but at least with this software, I can put it in a better quality. And once I get all the technical issues that are happening on my end, unfortunately, because once again, I'm not as savvy with this tech stuff as I wish I was. But once I get it all sorted out, we'll be back, and you'll be able to watch this on some of the other platforms that you prefer as well. But in the meantime, let me just read this. And I'll make sure to link this, or if I can, at some point in time, even if I have to re-upload this to YouTube and to X and all the other social media platforms, I'll make sure to include the articles that I reference in this particular live stream. So once again, this is headline: bureaucracy under Trudeau balloons by 42%, tripling private sector growth. So once again, this is written by Isaac Lamoureux, True North Wire, July 17th, 2024. The number of employees on the federal government's payroll has increased 3 times more than the population of Canada has since Prime Minister Justin Trudeau took office. And you got to remember, folks, everyone that works for government is a net expenditure on the taxpayer. It is a direct cost on you. And even if it's not coming out of your paycheck or your taxes right now, it will at some point in time in the future. And if it doesn't, if it's not you that ultimately pays for it, well, it'll be your kids or grandkids. Somebody, somehow, some way, somewhere is going to be forced to pay for all this stuff. And the kind of people that are typically forced to pay for these kind of, public sector, very entitled people that get not just paychecks, but pensions and perks that are way above and beyond anyone in the private sector. And those in the private sector are actually build the world that we live in, that actually give you the things, the staples that you need to thrive and survive as a human being. Whereas government, well, you know what I think about government. Even the things that they do offer or provide you comes at way more cost than what they're worth. And I mean by a tremendous amount. Not by a small amount, but by a large degree and a large margin. Anyways, let me continue reading this. Since 2016, just after Trudeau took office, the federal public service has increased by over 108,000 people, or 42%, according to data released by the Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat. So once again, this is going to have the link to that data that is on the website for Treasury Board of Canada. So once again, you'll have access to all that to verify if you feel the need to. But think about that. So this is just at the federal public service. This isn't including all people who work directly for government. This is just how much it has increased since 2016. And that is by over 108,000 people, or a 42% increase, which, that's massive, folks, because these are people, once again, that are making a whole lot more, right, than you'll ever hope to. And they'll get those gold-plated pensions as well, which you'll never see in your entire lifetime, ever. During the same period, Canada's population has only increased by just over 5 million people, or 14%. But even that is a big deal, right? But yes, even the massive growth of 5 million people, which is still massive in a country that started out just, I think when Trudeau took office, what was it, like 34 million or whatever, 36 million, whatever the heck it was, right, in the mid-30s. But when you're talking in the 30s, right, and to add 5 million onto that, that's a huge, huge amount of growth. Huge amount of growth. So both of them are actually unsustainable. And considering the fact that the public sector seems to be, one of the places where a lot of these, whether it's the immigrants or the people that are coming out of our universities, colleges, but a lot of people aren't going into productive fields these days. A lot of people are just becoming the takers, right? And don't forget about the rent seekers as well. And we're not just talking about the public sector here. There's a lot of them. But once again, it can all be directly attributed to big government and central banks. That is enticing people into these positions and making it very unappealing to be, the one out there that's actually carrying the weight, to be the Atlas out there and carrying the heavy weight of creating and maintaining society. Once again, a lot of pigs at the trough these days. During the same, Franco Terrazzano, federal director of the Canadian Taxpayer Federation, told True North that ordinary taxpayers are paying the price for the hiring spree. Of course they are. The federal bureaucracy consumes more than half of the federal government's day-to-day spending. More than half, folks. More than half. So higher taxes and debt are a direct result of Trudeau's ballooning bureaucracy, he said. The Canadian Taxpayers Federation noted that the cost of the federal payroll reached a record high of, get this, folks, $67.4 billion last year. I mean, just think about those numbers. $67.4 billion last year. I would have to double check on that, but that I think might even exceed, what goes into our socialized healthcare system. Or at least it's damn near close, if it's not more, right? That's a tremendous amount of money, folks. This is a 68% increase since 2016, when the federal government payroll was $40.2 billion, which even then was far, far too high of a burden for us taxpayers or future generations to have to carry. In the most recent fiscal year, the Liberals dished out $406 million in bonuses to federal departments and crown corporations. So that's another almost $500 million just in bonuses. For what? And for what? I mean, come on. Every one of us are well aware of how government workers or the public sector function, right? Overpaid and severely underworked, yet they get these massive bonuses. Well, of course, right? When you can force other people to pay the bill, right, by confiscating their money against their will, or the money of their future or successive generations, well, I guess, you can act to be as generous as you want to be, although you're not being generous, really, when you're spending other people's money. Now, are you? You're being quite immoral, actually, and doing a whole lot of virtue signaling for something that you actually didn't do, you forced others to do. These bonuses come despite the parliamentary budget officer, Yves Garreau, reporting that fewer than 50% of the government's own performance targets are being met. And I would say even the fewer than 50% is probably an inflated number, right? You know what I mean? Come on. Come on. We've seen an increase in the number of public servants and in public expenditures, but year after year, despite the fact that departments choose their own performance indicators and the targets, they don't seem to be getting significantly better at reaching them, Garreau testified to a parliamentary committee. So let me read that again, right? We've seen an increase in the number of public servants and in public, like that's another thing. Why can we really call them servants, right? I mean, do they serve us, right? And if they're our servants, how come they make a whole lot more money than us? Now, what kind of a fucking area, what kind of a servant makes more money than their masters or their employees, right? Or employers, I mean. That doesn't happen anywhere except in the bureaucracy of government, right? But anyways, let me continue on. Let me start over again, actually. We've seen an increase in the number of public servants and in public expenditures, but year after year, despite the fact that departments choose their own performance indicators and the targets, right? So they're the ones get to pick what the indicators are and what the targets are, so they get to manipulate things, from all areas of it, right, in terms of the performance, yet they don't seem to be getting significantly better at reaching them. Like that... Like that's a major indictment on the public sector and how much of a waste, right? Think about how much you could shrink this public sector, right? Which would take a huge, massive burden off the shoulders of present taxpayers and future taxers, right? A lot, folks, a lot. And trust me, you would get along just fine without this massive amount of bureaucracy. As a matter of fact, you'd have a whole lot more breathing room and people that are living at your expense. While they're rubbing it in your face, a lot of them too, right? So there's that. Between 2023 and 2024, an additional 10,000 people joined the federal public service, pushing the total from, get this, folks, 357,247 to 367,772. And once again, this is just the federal public service. That's not counting local or provincial, right? And once again, even when you include local and provincial, which we're going to get to those numbers down here, trust me, we'll get there. That is just people who work directly for government in some capacity. That is not including all the people who benefit indirectly from, not just those who work in the government public sector, right? Spouses, children, right? Or businesses. Let's not forget that. The Treasury Board told True North that the federal public services growth rate slowed to Let me read that again. The Treasury Board told True North that the federal public services growth rate slowed to 2.9% last year, down from 5.5% growth rate between 2017 and 2023. Ooh, it's slowed, but it's still growing. That's the thing. It's always and forever growing, just like inflation. Ooh, they've got a 2% target, or in Canada, what they say, between 2 and 3% kind of deal, or 1 to 3%, which puts 2% as the Goldilocks zone or whatever. But what that means when they want inflation at that rate, that means that, inflation means it's always going to be, right, a cost to you, even if it's only 2%. If inflation is at 2%, which is their target, it's still and always and forever going to be a direct cost imposed on you. It's a stealth tax. Inflation is a stealth tax, which means that prices or the money supply, which, once again, the increase in the money supply is what devalues the currency, which makes the prices go up a lot of times, or most of the times. But once again, at 2%, think about it. In 50 years, even if they could somehow manage to stick to that 2% target, which we know they can't, just look at the last few years, right? But even if they could somehow manage to stick to that target, well, once again, in 50 years, that's 100% extra cost on you. In addition to and on top of all the multiple layers of taxation that are already thrust and imposed on you, right? The federal committee said that the 2024 budget announced $4.2 billion in savings over 4 years. The federal committee said so that's the thing. When you inflate things, you can, this is the thing. You can make these numbers up so easily and so readily to make, we're saving money, but we're still spending a tremendous. So technically you could say that's correct, right? They're saving if they're not growing the public sector as much in this year as it was last year. So technically but it's still growing. Right? They're just not growing as much. Once again, They say the same shit about inflation. Oh, inflation's coming down. Or, oh, I've even heard them make the slip up. They usually try to avoid the particular slip ups, but I've seen them actually make them already in Canada from some of these hacks in the established media, like more or less suggesting or alluding to prices going down. But no, prices are not going down, folks. Prices are most certainly not going down. They're continuing to increase. It's just they're increasing at a smaller amount. But even with the smaller amount, that's still on top of all the rampant growth in prices that has been taking place once again. In particular, for the last, year and a half, which has been outstripping Canadians' actual budgets and their actual incomes substantially. And you know, if you live in this country, you know how bad things get, especially if you're living in any of the big cities. And actually, it's getting worse even in some other jurisdictions. Here in New Brunswick, I'm even seeing, like, there's just so many things. I was just saying the other day, is like, the traffic is just even getting to be horrendous in the Fredericton area at times, to the point where it's like, what am I going to have to move back to Toronto? Like, I left a place like Toronto to escape that kind of insanity, right? I don't want to live in a sardine can. I don't want, and that's the other thing. Housing costs were mostly reasonable here on the East Coast, but now that's greatly changing as well. Because once again, there's just far too much mass immigration, too many of these boomers who got their speculative wealth out of their proverbial gold mines, a.k.a. just their house, right? They sell it for some ridiculous amount to some sucker that's stupid enough to buy it because they think they're going to be able to pawn that off on someone else here in a year or two after they've made their, big amount of money off just doing nothing more than sitting on a house, right? But yeah, that's even taken place, and they're using all that money that they've, accumulated from that speculative asset, aka the roof over their head, to come to jurisdictions in Atlantic Canada and bid up the housing market, and once again make it out of reach for even our young people, even on the East Coast, even in Atlantic Canada. That's becoming a major, major problem especially for young people. And once again, especially if you're an older person and you're benefiting from all this government interventionism and central planning, you got to at least know that it's coming at the expense of your kids and your grandkids. And if you don't have any kids and grandkids, well, you might be able to use the excuse, well, hey, that's not my fucking problem. So yeah, well, that's a hell of a way to live, and that's a hell of a way to think. And I hope karma comes back to bite you in the ass someday for thinking along those lines. These savings will be primarily achieved through natural attrition. Here we go. So once they say it's going to be through natural attrition when people retire. But, I mean, how many times you hear that, but yet they continue to keep on growing the public sector in spite of the rhetoric. So, do you really believe them? Do you really trust them? I wouldn't, and I don't. In the federal public services of around 5,000 full-time equivalents over the next 4 years, said a spokesperson. Yeah, nice rhetoric. I prefer reality over rhetoric, to be honest with you. The spokesperson added the government spending dedicated to personnel has remained relatively stagnant over the last decade. Right. So once again, this is a government spokesperson, so take it with a grain of salt. This is about smarter government, not smaller government. Of course, it's never about smaller government. And the government of Canada will continue to prioritize high-quality service delivery to Canadians, said the spokesman. Oh, you like our healthcare system? Or the ArriveCan? Or, border services? Like, come on, or education? High-quality services? Really, though? I mean, like, once again, this is pure bullshit rhetoric. Bullshit rhetoric, and it needs to be exposed for what it is. The Canadian Taxpayer Federation pointed out that this doesn't change the reality of a ballooning public sector. No, it doesn't. The feds have hired tens of thousands of extra bureaucrats, handed out more than 1 million raises, and rubber-stamped hundreds of millions in bonuses in recent years, and still can't deliver good services, said Terrazzano. Right on. At least he knows what he's talking about. While the Liberals' hiring spree has seen the federal public services employment balloon, all government employees in Canada have grown at a smaller rate. Between October 2015 and June 2024, now get this, folks, the number of public sector employees in Canada, and there's a link so you can reference this source as well, has grown from 3,554,500 people to 4.412 million, or 4,412,100. an increase of just over 24%. But I mean, think about that. So right now, and you remember when I did that, I had that number from, it's been quite a few years ago now. It was an article, a prior article, where there was 4.1 million total government workers, and it was 71 point whatever percent of them were women, right? So government is just a thing to give women something to do to get overly paid and underworked these days. That is basically what government has turned into. And it's an absolute shame, right? Not that I begrudge some people, right, that go into these things and they think they're doing it for the right reason. But listen, I just got to be honest, right? It's coming at other people's expense. Somebody is paying for this stuff. You know, sorry for the harsh reality, but it is what it is. You know, don't shoot the messenger kind of thing. But think about this. So now you're looking at 4.4 million. So 4,412,100 people who work for government in some capacity in this country. That is just unbelievable. Now think about this. Here's another thing. Listen to this. Meanwhile, the private sector has grown from 11,709,000 to 13,430,100 employees between 2016 and now, an increase of 14.7%. So basically what they're saying is 24% increase in the number of public sector workers, 14% increase in private sector. And if you look at that in terms of the actual ratio, so 13 million, which is the latest, the biggest number for public sector employees, but 13 million people to pay for 4.4 million public sector people. So think about that. 4.4, that's 8.8. It's actually, so basically 1 in 3. Even worse than that, actually. It'd be 1.1 and 2 point whatever, right? Because 4.4 would be 12, 13.2. Actually, no, I guess it would. No, actually, that's, so we are, actually, no. So right, just doing the math quickly in my head, actually. So no, it's actually for every one taxpayer, or for every 3 taxpayers, you're paying 1 public sector. So 3 of you are paying, and you know, like I say, you know how expensive it is to pay for these public sector employees. And even when you're done working, right, you're still, or your kids or your grandkids are still going to have to pay for these people long after they're done, even when they're retired and no longer part of the public sector. Technically, they still are, because their pensions are still going to come as a direct consequence of a cost on you. So even with, when they were talking earlier about the attrition rate, well, even when they retire and they're no longer working, well, it's not like they're doing a whole lot. Most of them are not like they're doing a whole lot to start with, right? But even when they retire, they're still on the dole. They're still on the take, and they will be for the entirety of their lives. And as modern medicine gets to the point where it's getting to the point where people are living longer and longer and longer, that means there's going to be more and more of a burden placed on the taxpayer. So, you know, it was at one point in time when I said it was between 1 and 4, 1 and 5 Canadians, you know, work for the government. But when you're talking about, because these are people who are actually employed, you can't count the people who are not employed, and that's the thing about the beauty of these numbers. You can't count the people who are not employed, or kids that are, 18 and under, or whatever, or the people, like I say, that are children, or, once again, the people who are in the private sector who are long since retired and no longer paying taxes, although they're still paying some taxes, but not paying like payroll taxes and all that the other kind of taxes, right, that the typical private sector have to pay. So it went from 1 in 5 people to now basically 1 in 3. 1 in 3. So 1 public sector. For every 3 private sector workers, there's 1 public sector worker. That is a massive amount of growth. I mean, at the next thing would be, I mean, if it continues to grow at this rate, it won't take long before you're literally 1 and 2. 50%, where you're soon going to get to the point where it's 50%. Half of the people are the takers and half are the makers. You know, at some point in time, right, you just run out of people to pull the cart. And that's what's eventually going to happen and will be the ultimate outcome if things continue this way, which is, like I say, back to the name of this live stream. Big state, little people, right? If you want that to flip, you want to make yourself, and that's the other thing. You want to make these people in the that are now part of the public sector, if you want them to truly become productive members of society, well, the best thing you can do is get them the hell out of these damn entitled jobs and actually get them out actually doing things that produce and provide for society rather than being a burden on it. The Canadian Taxpayers Federation said the average salary for a full-time federal employee is, and this is average, folks, average, $125,300. The average salary for a full-time working Canadian was less than $70,000 in 2023. So think about that. They're making almost double, and that's just their salary. Wait till you see how much their pensions are in comparison and contrast to those in the private sector. Even worse. So once again, big state makes for little people. Well, unless you're the ones that, once again, are on the taker side. But for those of us who are the makers and have to, carry this kind of burden, it's a tremendous amount of weight for us to ever try to hold. And once again, think about how that stifles and stagnates productivity. Kind of hard to get inspired to be hardworking and punch up and above and beyond, right? To put in those extra time, those extra hours, to be the entrepreneur or to do those things and be so ambitious to produce and provide in society when you realize no matter what you do, the true game in town, those who are true benefiting from most of this stuff are ones who are on the taken side, those who work for government directly. That's a sad state of affairs, folks. Terrazano said any government that wants to balance the budget must take air out of the ballooning bureaucracy. Yeah, a lot. A lot. The Liberals' 2024 budget proposed $111.2 billion in new spending over the next 5 years, a $40 billion deficit, and no plan to balance the budget. No plan whatsoever. So once again, if you're a young person and you don't understand things like economics or government, all this stuff, okay, but I just got to tell you, at the very least, the starting point that you really should start to think about is that it's all a cost on you. It's all going to be you carrying the burden. Because once again, they're not taxing older folks. They're not even taxing Generation X like myself, who are a little bit older than quite a bit older than the youngest Gen Zers today, but they're not taxing us. And I mean, my generation isn't the one that assumed most of these government positions, right? You find huge proponents of them represented in the baby boomer generation, but even they are not being taxed in any way, shape, or form close to the amount. Well, you couldn't tax. That's the thing. The debts and deficits are so high now, you could tax someone at 100%, and it still isn't going to pay off these debts and deficits anytime soon. So once again, this is all costs that are being imposed on multiple successive generations. And boy, oh boy, when the day finally comes and they find this stuff out, and I hope at some point in time, a lot of people start watching videos like mine or others or the Canadian Taxpayer Federation, who are trying to properly educate and inform you of just the kind of perils and economic threats that await you as you get older. Now would be a good time to learn these things and start doing your best to get a lot of those people in your life to start vacating the state themselves, and shrink that state and make the people much bigger, right? Because, in the absence of a big state, then people have room to grow. Without it, small people, big government, big state. Canadians need a more efficient government. No, Canadians don't need any government, but I get you, right? When in Rome. Not a bloated government full of highly paid bureaucrats, said Terrazano. Had the bureaucracy only increased with population growth, there would be 72,491 fewer federal paper pushers today. And that's another thing. So that's the end of that article. But anyways, that's another thing. A lot of these people, once again, just like it said here, a bunch of paper pushers. I mean, we live in the age of AI, algorithms, and, machine learning that can do all these computations, can do this paper pushing all day, every day, with never needing to sleep, never needing to ask for a raise, right? And never, or at best, rarely ever even making a mistake or causing so much heartache and headache and economic blow and increased costs on the taxpayer. This could so easily be solved. Even if people say, "Well, I need whatever part of the state. I need my government," right? Well, right. I mean, at the very least, can you just find ways that it doesn't impose such costs on the rest of us in society who can't afford to keep doing this? But no. But once again, there's no incentive there for that. There's no incentive for that. That's the sad reality. Anyway, I do see there's a few chats here over on Rumble, so I'll check it out there. Good morning. This is from Darren Chica 442. Oh, I think Chikak. I know you told me last time and I forget. All right. Sorry, Darren. Sorry. Anyways, good morning, Bennett. Yes. Why are the government serpents making more money than a journeyman, scaffolder, or carpenter? Exactly. Welder, operator, electrician, pipe fitter, millwright, laborer. Hey, I'm completely with you there, Darren. It's really a sad take on things that people feel comfortable doing that. Really, as far as I'm concerned, you should, at the bare minimum, if you're, and you would know, like if you're some pencil pusher, government bureaucrat, and over the course of your entire career working for government that there's nothing that you did that actually produced or provided anything of substance or importance or brings meaning or fulfillment or modern conveniences or amenities to the people, to the population, you would know yourself. So I hope at the very least these people feel guilty. But I bet the minute they get that big fat paycheck, they don't think about where it came from. They just think about how and where they're going to spend it, right? So yeah, that's a sad reality. I know. I'm with you. I see I'm a Kulak. I'm a Kulak's in the chat. Welcome to the chat, by the way. I'm a Kulak. Hey, hosers, what's going on? Thanks for joining the stream as well. 442 million thieves, brother. 4.42 million thieves. Yeah, I got you. Yeah. Well, not quite 442 yet there, Darren, but that they're working on it, right? But yeah, thanks for the chat, getting in the chat there, guys. Like I say, sorry about if this is, actually, if you wouldn't mind, one of you, just let me know how things are going, actually, because once again, I'm using completely different streaming software instead of the StreamYards. And once again, it's all kind of new to me. So I'm still working out the wrinkles here. Hopefully I'll get it figured out eventually. But I just wanted to kind of ask, how's everything look, sound? At least I can see the chats, so that's a good thing. I'm supposed to be able to see them, that's the thing, properly. If this was all being done properly, so I've obviously made a mistake, messed up somewhere along the line. But I should even be able to see them all. And actually, I should even be able to see super chats and stuff like that. Should all be on the dashboard for my streaming software, but for some reason I'm not seeing it. I believe that's probably because I don't have YouTube included in this either, and it's supposed to be linked up. It showed that it was linked or connected, I guess is how they call it. And actually, my Facebook should have been connected as well, but for some reason something happened. I obviously missed some step along the way. But at least it's good to see that some folks are starting to see this live stream. And what I'll do after this is done, just because of the fact that I messed up, so it's my responsibility to at least try to remedy it as best I can, and the best way that I could do that is when it's all done, I will download, hopefully I can download the Rumble video. I never really thought about that because I usually download from YouTube or from my other streaming software. But if I can, I will download it, or I'll find some way to make sure that I can re-upload it to my other platforms such as YouTube. And of course I'll put it on all the social media pages too, right? Like Minds and Facebook and all that stuff. And up on X. I'll do as best I can. But worst case scenario, even if I can't, I will somehow figure out how to get this stuff sorted out before my next live stream. So thanks once again for you folks joining me here today. 5x5, right on. Awesome show and good sound. Well, thank you, Darren. Really appreciate that. That's awesome. Thank you for the quick feedback. Good to know that at least that part of everything is going well. Anyways, let me see what else. So, didn't want to cover the Trump thing too much. As a Canadian, well, obviously it will have an effect on us and stuff, but I'm not a big fan of beating the proverbial dead horse. And in terms of the Trump thing, I'm sure you folks have heard and seen enough about the whole assassination attempt. So I don't think there's a whole lot extra that I can bring to the table other than what I was saying very early on in the live stream, which is, like I say, Hollywood themselves. Well, especially modern Hollywood, but even Hollywood in its glory days, when it seemed to be at least doing a somewhat decent job of writing good content and new content, whereas now it's just rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse, recycle, and repeat, right? Seems to be all Hollywood's good at. But even, like I say, even in Hollywood's heydays, even with some of the best writers and directors and producers all putting their great minds together, they'd be hell-pressed to trying to come up with a script, any more enticing, exciting, and full of all the things that get people excited about, right? As the whole, Trump 2024 run. It's just amazing, folks. It's just amazing to see how it's all unfolded, right? Just when you think Trump is down with all those indictments and the multiple lawsuits and criminal and pending criminal charges, and then boom, Supreme Court steps in, boom, kind of puts a kibosh and quashes that idea. Then, Trump gets an extra bump by, and I mean, even people that you would never expect in the world, the last people you would ever expect in the world are some of these Silicon Valley tech guys, right? Although that's the thing, some of them I've always wondered. I've always wondered about Mark Zuckerberg in particular. Is this guy a libertarian or at least a minarchist? He's definitely not a full-on, or sure as hell has never said anything that would lead me to believe that he's a full-on, genuine libertarian, who actually understands the philosophy of liberty. But at least minarchist in some way, right? I never knew that. Well, a lot of the original big tech gurus, the ones that were that started some of these big disrupting platforms, were libertarians. But of course, they got sold out to the highest bidder or to Wall Street, right? Which I repeat myself. And now have been completely taken over by a bunch of big government loving statists and corporatists, right? But it's strange. I'll play. I know you won't be able to see the actual video, but I'll play this because I thought this was quite amazing. So let me just play this just for the hell of it for you folks. Make sure the volume's turned up here. Make sure you can hear it.
So I'm not planning on doing that this time. And that includes, not endorsing either of the candidates. Now, look, there's obviously a lot of crazy stuff going on in the world. The historic events over the last, over the weekend. And, on a personal note, it's, seeing Donald Trump get up after getting shot in the face and pump his fist in the air with the American flag is one of the most badass things I've ever seen in my life.
So I'm not sure if you could hear that, folks, because it was quite quiet on there, and I had my volume turned up fairly loud. But anyways, in case you didn't hear, that's basically Mark Zuckerberg saying that, the whole iconic picture of Trump, right, pumping the fist in the air and saying fight, 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 is one of the most badass things he's ever seen in his life. That's coming from Mark Zuckerberg. So, even someone that you would think is a pretty dull, boring, like data-driven, like, kind of almost like data from Star Trek, right? Not much in terms of emotion and stuff, right? Very, very square, very kind of nerdy. But even someone like himself, right? Sorry for the negative attributes that I'm placing on you there, Mark, but hey, that's just how you come across to me. I don't know you personally, right? But anyways, even a guy like him is like, damn, he's even inspired. He's on, on the public record saying that, yeah, what Trump did, man, that's badass. The guy's using the term badass, right? So, think about what that's done. And the script, like I say, how this is going to be written, how this is all going to play out. It's like I say, are we in the Truman Show? I don't know. Think about it. Even Elon Musk, the man, I think he's a stone cold genius. In some way, in some regard, every human being, though, like they can be geniuses in some way and complete fucking idiots in other, including myself, right? Right? We are all fallible. But, I mean, Elon Musk has even tossed out the idea that he believes we're in a simulation. Now, that's not to suggest that you should ever think, like, here's the other thing. Do this thought process. What if we were in a simulation? Well, that would really destroy your whole life in terms of, well, then what's the point if my whole life is just directed and controlled? Well, basically, people, I think, for the most part, would throw up their hands and almost give up, right? Which would be, well, was that written in the script? I don't know. Actually, that would only happen, I guess, if he had free will or if it was written in the script. But once again, even if you don't want to believe that that's a possibility, the way things have been unfolding, holy crap, you can't help but think, well, reality is stranger than fiction. I guess that's the best take to think about it, right? Is reality truly is stranger than fiction, and it sure as hell is these days. But anyways, so here's another thing I just wanted to point out too, because once again, as you folks know, and shout out to Andrew Lawton, appreciate what you did here over on X, this post you put up there. I'll just read it and then I'll play the video. It's a 7-minute video. Anyways, so Andrew Lawton, this was posted July 18. A woman at Home Depot was harassed and lost her job after wishing Trump dead. It's a reprehensible view, but it's also despicable that people are rejoicing in her losing her job over it. The right needs to rise above the left's cancel culture, not adopt it. And this is something that you folks have heard me many times in the past talk about this is, yeah, I'm not a fan of these right-wingers with their bullshit, fucking nonstop contradictions and hypocrisy. It makes me sick. And once again, I firmly and fully believe the only reason why the right even pretend that they care about, and this is what I mean, I'm using their words, right? You know I'm not a fan of the left-right thing, but I'm just using their own words and their rhetoric and their self-identifying labels they give themselves, right? But I firmly believe, and I've said this in the past many times, the only reason why the right is pretending to care about freedom and liberty these days is because they don't have that kind of entrenched power in the institutions, in the state, that are dominating things and dominating the culture. They're the ones that are feeling powerless these days, so they're doing anything they can and espousing the kind of rhetoric to appeal to those who too feel disenfranchised, because they recognize there's a lot of people, but who share their view or share their feeling or their lot in life, right? But make no mistake about it. Both the left and the right, in terms of the status, in terms of people who want to go into positions to micromanage and control every aspect of your social life, none of these people have your true, genuine liberty or your sovereignty as their best interest or anything that they genuinely care about. No, it's their own self-interest, right? It's their own benefit at other people's expense that they're prominently more concerned with, right? And that's just the truth. Even if people don't want to hear it, hey, I'm here to tell the truth, and I'm here to tell people things they don't want to hear. I'll leave the bullshit political bantering or the us versus them in terms of red versus blue and the political posture. I'll leave that to other people. I still am the kind of person that firmly believes in, I'll deal with some political situations, but I like to talk about it with the philosophical lens, right? Looking through it with the philosophical lens and bringing ethics, epistemology, and metaphysics to the forefront to give people the proper way, or to help people learn the proper way to think about these things rather than the old us versus them or red versus blue. Anyway, so I'll play a little bit of this. Like I say, I wish I could put this on the screen for you folks, but hopefully you'll be able to hear this audio anyways. I'm sure you will. Let me just turn it all the way up. So here we go.
It kept me up at night. Not all night. It kept me up for a good 30 minutes or so. But I was thinking about it a lot, and I had a spirited discussion with a friend of mine in an interview I did on her show in Australia about this. And she tended to disagree with my perspective, which, believe it or not, some people are allowed to do. And you may have seen this video circulating in the wake of the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. And it was a video of a man who filmed it confronting a cashier at Home Depot in the United States. Take a look.
Darcy Waldron? Yeah? Okay, from Cayuga? You think that the shooter should have been a better shot? Is that what you posted on Facebook? You think that the shooter should have been a shooter, huh? Yeah, I think that's pretty messed up. Pretty anti-American, if you ask me. As a veteran, I'm disgusted. What have you provided to this country? Huh? I'm sorry. This is ridiculous. You are ridiculous. And I'm making you famous.
And he certainly did. Home Depot responded as this video went viral, amplified, among other people, by libs of TikToks. Home Depot said, "Hi, this individual's comments do not reflect the Home Depot or our values. We can confirm she no longer works at the Home Depot." So the sense that I get out of that is that she was terminated. I believe it's possible she quit, but I think from the context and the timing, she was probably fired. And this, just to put into perspective, this is what she said. She said in her comment on Facebook, "Too bad they weren't a better shooter. He is the definition of corrupt and evil," unquote. Now, I disagree with that. I think it's reprehensible to wish violence upon.
All right, so Andrew's just going to offer his perspective on that, and I'm sure he'll have a decent perspective. And if you want to check it out and watch the rest of this, once again, you'll see it. Just go to Andrew Lawton, at Andrew Lawton on X, and check it out. Like I say, this was posted on July 18th. But that's the thing. If you think about it, and you've probably heard other people say this too, is the whole reason, right, why this lady thinks that way. She don't know Trump personally. Of course she doesn't. But her and the millions of others who share her view and wish death upon someone like Trump, right? And once again, this could work for both sides of the political spectrum or the political divide. But let's just deal with this particular situation as it is, because this is the one that is front and center today. But the reason why she does that is not just because of the political bantering of Trump's political opponents, because, you can expect that kind of rhetoric from those kind of vile people who, like I say, just seem to just want to use the state as their ultimate means to the end at everyone else's expense. A lot of these people are just highly immoral individuals to begin with. But it's not just the political class that you create this atmosphere or pump up this narrative of Trump the fascist or Trump the dictator. No, we've all seen it, and it's been recorded, and it's all over the internet. You can no problem finding the countless examples of a substantial portion of those in the establishment media who parrot that same kind of bullshit rhetoric and narrative. Those are the people who are greatly contributing to putting the crosshairs on Trump and enticing and almost provoking people to do these things, right? Just think about it. You would think you're doing an excellent thing, an excellent service, if you genuinely believe that Trump is a dictator, that Trump is a fascist, that Trump is what the hacks in the media and his political opponents have accused him of. And the fact that they call him a convicted felon with these trumped up charges that he's been convicted of by, a Democrat appointed judge. All of the things that they've done to Trump and the way they've painted him as being this vile, despicable, tyrannical fascist, right? White supremacist, all those things. These are the people who are not directly, but indirectly responsible for the amount of not just vitriol, but potential violence, and possibly even the violence that has already taken place. This attempt on Donald Trump's life, who's to know? Who's to know? As of yet, I can't say I know as of yet, but there's a very good chance that young 20-year-old man was somewhat radicalized in some way. That's the thing. Apparently, he didn't have much of a social media presence, but has been radicalized by not just a bunch of politicians espousing hateful rhetoric and straw man bullshit towards Donald Trump, but by so many of these hacks in the media parroting that exact same kind of messaging. And even a lot of pundits on television and TV shows, right? Like things like The View, which, a lot of people watch shows like that or other different shows. I don't. I couldn't stand to watch stuff like that, to be honest with you. But there are a lot of people who have prominent voices out there who have all been parroting the same trumped up narrative of he's a dictator. He's going to be a dictator from day one. He's a fascist. Or he's going to do this, that. Which, once again, we've seen the way they painted the guy before he even became president in the first one. And right up to the point where even trying to say that, the whole Russian collusion thing. And I mean, you've seen how much they targeted Trump. And it wasn't just, once again, it wasn't just the political class. It was the media and pundit class as well. So those are the people who are greatly contributing, and they're doing the same thing while protecting their tribe, their side of the political divide, right? Propping them up, giving them all kinds of excuses why they should retain their power, right? And it's the same thing is happening up here in Canada. And it's an absolute shame. I mean, once again, not that I'm a huge, giant fan of Pierre Poilievre, and nor do I have any real faith that a lot of the things the guy's saying, which, once again, I'll admit, listen, I'll tell you, some of the things Pierre Poilievre is saying sounds great. Sounds great. But I'm under no illusion that he's actually, his reality is going to, the reality, once he's the prime minister, if he becomes prime minister, that the reality is going to match up with his rhetoric. But even Pierre Poilievre, which is so out of the blue if you think about it, but this is the way the media functions. And they get their cues from the political class, and then they just, once again, replicate and duplicate it and parrot it so that they're good little propagandists for the state. But they're basically using the same kind of attributes of, white supremacists, fascists, whatever the hell other kind of crap names they want to call, like homophobe, xenophobe, blah, 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 right? All that stuff. Anti-LGBT, whatever, transphobe, the rhetoric they espouse towards Pierre Poilievre. And you can see it's happening not just here in Canada and the U.S., but all over the Western Anglosphere or the Western world and in Europe. And somehow it has managed to resonate with a lot of people. Although I got to expect after this, I think they overplayed their hands. I really genuinely think they overplayed their hands. I think their desperation finally got the best of them. Or I at least sure as hell hope so. Let's see what else we got there. So yeah, and once again, if you go, another thing too. If I can't link all of these things in the description, if I don't get a chance to do that, if you even just go to my X page or even my Canadian Libertarian Facebook page, I will have at least the kind of stuff that I've covered here on those pages. So even the things like that video from Andrew Lawton, I retweeted it. So you'll be able to find this stuff with relative ease if you go to any of my social media pages. I make it as easy as possible so that you folks can not just confirm, but expand upon and listen to it all or read things in their entirety. All right, let me see. So I'll just close up. Let me close up a couple of these pages here so that I can minimize the bandwidth that I'm using. Oh, actually, here's another thing. I wanted to cover this real quick. Yeah, where did that go? There we go. Let me bring this on. So this one is headline, Supreme Court confirms state is liable when Parliament enacts unconstitutional laws. Federal government only liable when laws enacted are clearly wrong, in bad faith, or an abuse of power. This is reported by Peter Zimonjic, July 19th, 2024, but you can find it in other, if you don't want to read CBC, you can there's a Toronto Sun article covering the same thing, which is basically, I see it's actually just a Canadian Press reprint, copy and paste over at the Toronto Sun. But actually, I'll read the one from the Toronto Sun here. Why not? So this one too was Canadian Press, Sarah Ritchie. Headline, Top Court says government can be held liable for making unconstitutional laws. Supreme Court of Canada has ruled that the state is not immune from liability for drafting and enacting laws that are later found to be unconstitutional. So, that's a little bit better wording than obviously how CBC would do it, right? But that's CBC for you. Always and forever the apologists for, the liberals in particular, right? The progressives, I should say. Because there's nothing liberal about today's liberals, so-called liberals, right? In a ruling Friday, a majority of the top court said governments have a limited liability for laws that are found to violate the charter. And once again, the judge found that in the invocation of the Emergencies Act was unconstitutional and irrational and unreasonable. So that right there. So if you were affected in any way by the Emergencies Act, and I would even expand that out to some of the the laws that were enacted as a consequence of all these COVID mandates and policies that were direct infringements on our inherent and inalienable rights. So once again, I would include the Emergencies Act and a lot of those mandates and lockdowns, business closures, all these edicts that not just the federal but provincial governments imposed on the people. I would be looking to sue the living shit, in particular here, the federal government. And I acknowledge, of course, even if they get found guilty and they got to pay out a big amount of money, the money is going to come from us, the taxpayers. So make no mistake about that. You're gonna be paying for it regardless. But hey, at least at the legal level, a precedent will have been set. And that is very, very important, at least so that people understand, how things are, that governments don't have this carte blanche ability, right, to just, create these mandatory edicts and just make it stick, and you have to do it, right? This is really important, that people who have the means, even if you got to do a class action suit and pool your resources or do it individually. But if you were affected, in a profound way, in particular, like I say, not just the COVID stuff, but in particular for the Emergencies Act, take the federal government, the federal Liberals, the Trudeau Liberals, take them to court and hold their feet to the fire. Because it's all right here, even by the Supreme Court are admitting. So basically they're telecasting to you is, yeah, you have not just the capacity or not just the right, but really, as far as I'm concerned, the duty. If you care about freedom or liberty or, the law, right, the proper law, right, and holding government to account and keeping tyranny at bay, then you need to step up to the plate and take the federal government to court. That is my recommendation. In a ruling Friday, a majority of the top court said governments have a limited... Okay. The decision paves the way for a New Brunswick man to take the federal government to court over two laws passed by the former Conservative government in 2010-2012. Joseph Powers was convicted of criminal offenses in the 1990s, served a prison sentence, and then went on to become a medical radiation technologist. So this case didn't even have anything to do with COVID or the Emergencies Act, but the precedent is there. So once again, because, and it's even all this, you don't even have to go all the way back to the 90s. All the decisions are fresh right now, fresh off the press in terms of the federal judge that ruled the invocation of the Emergencies Act as unconstitutional and unreasonable. So, yeah, I won't worry about too much talking about this particular case, considering it's kind of something that it may or may not affect you, but the large picture is, once again, in reference to the invocation of the Emergencies Act. And once again, government has to be held to account and put the checks in power at the very least to make sure that they have no capacity to do this kind of stuff again. That to me is very, very important. Anyways, folks, I think I did a pretty good job in terms of covering the kind of things I wanted to cover today. I'm just going to take a quick look here. Well, there's stuff about the Canadian unemployment rate rising to 6.4% and student summer jobs especially hard to come by. But this is another effect of mass immigration that are pushing not just older Canadians, but even the younger Canadians out of the job market and the housing market. So for young people in particular, they're getting a double whammy from this mass immigration push. And, there's nothing benevolent about, people like to pretend pretend like they're being compassionate or benevolent in some way by, promoting, accepting, or cheering on mass immigration. Oh, these people need help. Well, how about you fucking worry about the people in your backyard, right? At the very least, or your own kids and grandkids. How about you worry about them first and foremost? And when you've got them all sorted out and not having to carry such a burden that a lot of you folks have imposed on them, then maybe you can spare some of that excess capacity of benevolence or virtue signaling to people that you have no idea who the fuck they are or what they stand for, what they represent, or what kind of effect they're going to have on our culture. How about that? As a quick suggestion. How about you just worry about the people that are already here and going through hell and massive hard times? How about you try putting your best foot forward in that regard before you start virtue signaling how much you care for people that you've never met in your entire fucking life and might ultimately be a drain and detriment on you and your resources as well, right? You know, maybe save yourself a little bit of shame and some future embarrassment. That's, once again, just a suggestion by me. Anyways, yeah, I think that's pretty good. So I'm going to probably tie this live stream up. And once again, I really appreciate you folks for joining the live stream. I know it was a really short notice, and I know because of the whole new streaming software that I'm actually trying out that things didn't work exactly as planned. But once again, we'll get it sorted out at some point in time. And when I do, things will get bigger and better. And once again, let's keep in mind the name of this live stream. Big state, little people. And the opposite of that is what we should be striving and fighting for, is little state, although I'll be happy when there is no state, when people are no longer believers. But hey, in the interim, little state, big people. Let's try to flip that thing and put things in the right context and put people truly in power rather than, right, the most vile among us, right? I mean people who don't want to use force or violence, coercion or theft as a means to an end. You know, put those people, give those people, make those people big, make their opponents, make status very, very, very small. And once again, we will all benefit as a consequence of that. Thanks a lot to all you folks who did join the live stream. I'll see you in the next one. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.